Welcome to another episode of State of the Wizards. This is episode 42. We are back, my dude. Like we never
Absolutely.
left.
Mm.
I'm your host, D-Can, along with my co-host, K. Jose. And we are the voices of the unheard. Today, K. Jose, we're going to discuss grading the Wizards Summer League. Should the Wizards fans be concerned about Alex Sarr? New predictions on Kuzma and Tyus' timeline to be moved, or do they get moved at all? And what are our expectations for the upcoming season? Next on State of the Wizards. Before we get started, if this is your first time tuning in to the channel, thank you guys. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me, Wizards Mafia, and follow my main man, K. Jose, DC Hoopla on the X app. Also, please follow us, State of the Wizards on Instagram and State of the Wizards on the X app. All right, K. Jose. The first question I got for you tonight, man. Should the Wizards fans be concerned with Alex Sarr? What you got?
No, but I do understand why they're concerned. Um, we've dealt with we deal with Wizards syndrome. We deal with WTSD. So, as I've said on Twitter, if this was Tommy Shepard or if this was Ernie Grunfeld drafting Sarr, then yes, I completely understand. And the reason being for that is we didn't have a formula or a plan put in place for him to develop. So now that we have a new front office, everything is kind of put in place. And really, as I look at it, it's up to the coaching staff to figure out his strengths and weaknesses. And it's also up to Alex Sarr if he actually wants to be better. Like, what is the ceiling? What kind of player does he want to be? I know you, shout out to Professor Glover as well, have said LaMarcus Aldridge. I said, hey, get him to work out with Kevin Garnett because he's not a 5. He wants to play the 4. So you got to just get the tools in place, have everything set up for him to become the player that he is. So, no, I don't think it's time to worry about him because at the end of the day, Summer League is the YMCA. Anybody can have a good night. A person who's a walk-on or who wasn't drafted is going to put up about 20-something points because there's no defense being played. So I would not be concerned. We knew that his offense was not there, but we knew defensively is what his strengths are. And we'll talk about that too, because there are some stuff that I've seen that I do have concerns about when it comes down to his defense.
Yeah, so, I look at it like this, man. There's a lot of Wizards fans that they don't trust the draft process. Meaning, we're so, I guess, we suffer from, like you said, we suffer from that serious PTSD when we draft certain guys. Right. And, we have to trust the process of Alex Sarr. We have to trust his development. We have to be able to, and you know what? Yes, we said the same thing about, who else did we say that about? Johnny Davis. We said it about Denny. You said that about Rui, right? We've said this about every draft pick that's ever come through here, right? So Alex Sarr is no exception. I think the difference, though, is for a lot of people is because Alex Sarr was picked number 2 overall. That's why a lot of fans are judging this draft pick a little bit different than, say, our past lottery draft picks. But the lottery is the lottery. Am I right? Like, if you get drafted top 10, the expectations are the same, right? Just because you land 2, you land 5, you land 7, you land 8, you land 10. If you're within that top 10, the expectations for development and improvement are the same for each player. I don't think the Wizards organization is going to Alex Sarr and saying, "Oh, we got to treat you differently because you were the number 2 pick." Like, no, they're going through the same conversations they're having with all of the other players as far as development. Now they're looking at Alex Sarr's game in particular, and they're probably noticing the same things that we're noticing in real time. Alex Sarr is struggling to corral rebounds. All right, he's great on the offensive end, but the hands is an issue for me, right? So
Right.
my thing is what is it with your hands? You know, you're a big man. So we're relying on you to grab that basketball, don't get it knocked out your hands, don't fumble it around. You know, Bub Carrington on a couple of possessions went into the hole, dished it off to Sarr, and he fumbles the ball. What is it about the hands? I'm not quite sure. You know, who else was a top pick for us who had a hand problem? Who had
Kwame.
problems catching the ball?
Kwame Brown was one of them.
Correct. Kwame had that problem as well.
He had because he had small hands. Brendan Haywood struggled catching that ball.
Oh, absolutely. I remember Brendan Haywood struggling to catch the ball.
Eton Thomas used to struggle handling that ball too. So
yeah,
it's a pretty well known fact. But it's kind of like what I said earlier today to Tony Toss. I said for every Kevin Durant, you have an Evan Turner. For every John Morant, you know, you have a who was somebody else I mentioned too that went number 2. Oh, Michael Kidd Gilchrist.
mm-hmm.
You're just gonna have that. So Sarr, yes, him being a number 2 pick, his expectations is we're expecting him to be productive, but we have to keep it 100 that there have been plenty of players before him that did not perform, that were either top 3 picks. Some went number 1, like Anthony Bennett. Look how long his career lasted in the NBA.
Yeah.
So should we be concerned? A little bit, but it's kind of too early. We're talking about summer league, and the guys that is playing well in the summer league, is there any guarantee that these guys 4 months from now, when the season actually start, that they're going to be just lighting it up like that? It's a totally different ball game when the real regular season actually begins. So we knew that Sarr was a project. We know that Keyshawn George is a project. Even with Bub Carrington, these guys are not old enough to drink. So it's going to take time. And Will Dawkins has said that. So it's either you trust Will Dawkins or you don't.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, right? You got to trust the process in which the front office is putting in front of you. We're only our second summer in. Bilal was the first pick. Vuk was the second pick. And now Sarr's the third pick. You know, Bub is the fourth pick. And Keyshawn's the fifth pick, right? So we have to be able to allow these kids. That's really what they are. They're kids still. They're young adults. A couple of them, maybe all of them, aren't even old enough to drink. So right now we need to allow Sarr to work through that. Now, for the folks that are like, well, you know, Wiz Takes or Wiz's Mafia, you know, you were critical of Johnny Davis after his first summer league game. Yes, because Johnny Davis's ceiling is not as high as Alex Sarr's ceiling. You know, Johnny Davis was also projected to be an offensive minded scorer, right? So that was what we would look for day one from Johnny Davis. Alex Sarr's projection was he's a defensive guy. He was brought here for the defensive end only, not for his offense. So I think a lot of people are just forgetting the fact that, you know, all of the scouting reports out on Alex Sarr was all about his defense and how great he played on the defensive end, right? He's a shot blocker, rim protector. You know, I don't know if they said anything about crashing the boards or anything like that, but
no.
Yeah, they didn't really say all of that. But at the same time, you know, it was never said that this man was going to be a defensive liability in that paint. It was always said he's going to protect that paint. He, you know, all the things that I read about him, right, was that, you know, he's around the basketball. So, you know, I don't really have any, my end thing is I don't really have any concerns about Alex Sarr's game. You know, that's just the bottom line. I don't think that fans should have any concerns because, you know, really, like, I compare him to LaMarcus Aldridge because the first game where he hit 2 threes, right, and then I think he hit a mid range, he hit a midi. He shot the ball fairly well. He dribbled into the paint, laid it up, against the Hawks. Like he was aggressive. So after the first summer league game, I was like, oh man, like we got a potential LA on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
But the last two summer league games, he's looked like, in my opinion, I said Tyson Chandler. I felt like his ceiling was LaMarcus Aldridge from the first game, and then his floor is Tyson Chandler. But even then, like it is that's not saying that he would be bad. That's pretty much saying like he has all the tools to be a potential defensive player of the year candidate. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about
Mm-hmm.
him.
Yeah, that's actually fair. So let me ask you this now. If Alex Sarr's career, let's say he averages 15 and 10, would that be satisfying for a number 2 pick?
Oh man. Psh. I look, he's a defensive oriented basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Anything over 15, I said 17, but anything over
Mm-hmm.
15 is a plus. Anything over
Okay.
15 is a plus. I'm not expecting him to score 20 like LA did, right? But because we're in a different time period too. You got to think. Like even LA wouldn't be doing what he's doing in the modern NBA. There's a lot
Right.
of plays that don't run through the forward like that. You got to kind of create your offense, and or you got to wait until that offense is created for you. So he would probably be a rim runner. He'd get a lot of his
Mm-hmm.
baskets, based off of transition buckets. In the half court, I can see a lot of pick and roll. So that's something else he's gonna have to work on. But 15 and 10, oh man, without a doubt, that would be tremendous. That would take it from the expectations of, like, if you're asking me his first 2 years in the league, if he's giving me 15 and 10, yeah, you'd be a fool to think that his offense doesn't improve from that point on. If he's giving you 15 and 10 his first 2 years in the league, you'd be a fool to think that he would not improve offensively and he could get to 20 by year 5 or year 6. You'd be a fool to think that
Right.
that's not possible.
That's fair. So I think for Saul, I think he'll be fine, man. I mean, here's one thing I was thinking about earlier today. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if we end up picking up his brother, Olivier. I don't know if he's going to make OKC with the team, but don't be surprised that we snatch him up and it'd be almost similar like a Giannis situation with his brother over there with Milwaukee. Because what I am a little bit concerned about with Sarr is his confidence level. Now, we've seen that with Denny. When he's not playing well, his confidence is shot. We've seen that even with jersey number 1, when his confidence level is shot. And with these past 2 games that Sarr has put, we shot like one. He's like, we're shooting 1 for 21 from the field, and people are complaining. You got the hater page and all that stuff, all these different Twitter accounts talking about him, saying, hey, they're sitting there saying that Bronny was some garbage, but look at the Washington Wizards number 2 pick. I'm pretty sure he's seeing that. So what I am concerned about, I'm concerned about his psyche. Is this going to mess with him to the point that he's not going to be able to perform? So that I said, hey, what better way than bringing his brother here to kind of like cheer him on and be his support? Because he's probably going to need that. And I was thinking, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him here.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea to do that. I mean, to make him feel comfortable, Giannis, like you said, Giannis needed that, right? So his brother pretty much got a lifetime contract with the Bucks as long as Giannis is satisfied,
Right.
So
And it's not unheard of. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
look
not
at
unheard of.
Orlando. Look at
It's not
Orlando. You
unheard
got the
of at all.
Wagner brothers down there.
Right, exactly. So I would be all for that. So moving on, we spent 15 minutes on that topic. New predictions on Kyle Kuzma and Tyus Jones timeline for being moved. Do they get moved at all, my dude? What's going on with that?
Well, for Tyus Jones, he's not a member of the team. He's on unrestricted free agent. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's a possibility we may lose him for nothing. He may walk. Um, I know some people say that it's a possibility he'll come back and re-sign, but it's from what Josh Robbins said, it's unlikely that he's returning. So we most likely will not get anything for him. Now, when it comes down to bulletproof, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I he this is why I gave him the nickname. He dodged a bullet when it was Rui, and he dodged a bullet again when it's Denny. So who's next that he's going to dodge a bullet on when it comes to the trade deadline? Is it going to be somebody like Marvin Bagley or Holmes? I mean, who is it going to be? That's why I call him bulletproof, because he continues to just be bulletproof every time the trade deadline comes.
Yeah,
He's
I mean,
still there.
yeah, he's for sure dodging. I mean, he's for sure
I mean,
dodging
oh,
that trade wire. Like he's doing all kinds of tricks out there, man, to avoid getting traded. The question is proposed in a way where basically the assumption is Tyus Jones will be a Wizard until proven otherwise. I mean, yes, he's a free agent, no doubt, but right now, you know, we're the only team out there that could give Tyus Jones, what he actually is asking for, essentially. But I think the idea was we wanted to sign him to only get rid of him, right? That was
yeah.
what the reports were. And so we're
Hmm.
trying to garner additional trade assets for Tyus Jones, maybe a first, maybe 2 seconds. I'm not quite sure. But I'd have to say that if Tyus Jones walks for nothing, that would be this front office's first official L. As
I
as
agree.
as much as they've been knocking it out the park, with the draft, um, as much as they've been on top of all of the transactions, getting Bills 251 out of here, trading Chris Paul away, for Jordan Poole, the KP trade right now is still lingering and hanging over our head because what does the end result of that trade actually look like? If Tyus walks, then the end result is nothing, and that just is not a good look for this front office.
Yeah, that would be a serious blunder. As I've always said, I expect this front office to make some mistakes because they're going to make some mistakes. Not moving Tyus Jones. I don't know if it's true or not that if we would have got 4 second-round picks, but the fact that we didn't move him at the deadline, that is a concern. If he walks away for nothing, that's bad. When it comes down to bulletproof, that could be bad too if we never get rid of them. Because for one, these two players that we're talking about, you have to ask the question: is there a market for these guys? Does anybody value these guys? I mean, Tyus Jones is an unrestricted free agent right now, and there has not been one team that's offered him a contract. I mean, I don't know if you've read anything, but I haven't seen any articles of a team offering him a contract. It's
Mm-mm.
literally teams skipping over him to get other players.
Yeah,
And it's
he's
the
not.
same thing we saw last year when it
Yeah,
came down to bulletproof.
yeah, he's not really garnering a lot of attention on the market at all.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of crazy because he was a starting point guard for us. It wasn't like he was coming off the bench.
Right.
He's looking for a contract that's going to pay him. It has to be anywhere between maybe 17-18 million dollars. I'm sure he doesn't want to settle for anything just above the new MLE, which I think pays out between 13 and 14 million dollars. So, yeah, I think he may re-sign with the Wizards on a team friendly deal. And if that is the case, then you revisit these talks of moving him and possibly Kuzma maybe together around the trade deadline. What you think?
It's a possibility. I mean, the question is, what team could use him? Who could you? There's plenty of teams out there that could use a backup point guard. That's the thing too. Does Tyus Jones is he okay with being a backup point guard, or does he want to be a starter? And maybe that could be the reason why there's no market for him, because the league looks at him as like, no, you're a backup. It's kind of the same thing with Bulletproof. Yes, he's a starter here. Yes, he puts up 22 points here. But again, as I said on the Locked On Wizards episode, that only net us 85 wins since he's been here. So the market probably looks at him as a role player. We got 2 role players that the league is telling us we don't value those guys. And what you're asking for, we're not giving you that. So we'll give that to Mikal Bridges before we'll give it to Kyle Kuzma. We'll give that to marketing before we give it to Kyle Kuzma.
Pascal Siakam was another one.
Exactly. Like we'll give it to those guys. Hell, we'll give it to Rudy Gobert before we give it to Kyle Kuzma. So
yeah, and
that's where we're kind of at right now.
I said it too on Locked On Wizards as well, that the Jalen Brunson's contract before this new one that he recently got, right? He was on a very Kuzma-like contract where his contract was also descending over the next 3 years for the Knicks.
Yeah.
He played outside of the value of that contract by becoming an all-star. Well, ultimately, he got the contract he got now, but I think he left like 113 million or something like that on the table.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Right, but the point is Jalen Brunson signed that deal to go to New York, and then he played above the value of that contract, where it forced New York at that point to have to pay him, a large sum amount of money, and where now the market for Jalen Brunson is, he's so valuable now that New York would never ever come up off Brunson, So the same thought process it should be the same for Kyle Kuzma, and it should be the same for Jordan Poole, because both of these guys are playing within the current value of their deals. And unless they become an all-star, you can't expect teams to say, well, we're going to give you 2-3 first round picks for that guy. You understand what I'm saying? They're not going to break the bank for Kyle Kuzma at $23 million right now. They're not going to give you more value for someone who's at a lesser value within his contract.
Right.
So it's so annoying to me, because you got so many people who argue this point with me, and I'm like, why don't you guys just see that there's other players that teams are willing to offer more for, because the market says that they're worth more than Kyle Kuzma. Stop being in your feelings. Kyle Kuzma ain't helping you pay your bills, right? Kyle Kuzma's not going to buy you a car next week.
Right.
He's not going to show up at your wedding. He ain't going to babysit your kids. Like, get out of your feelings. Like, y'all act like you know these players personally. They don't know you, man.
Right.
So, that's all I have to say about this. It's really getting to the point now, though, I think, for the front office and Will Dawkins, where you have to really be realistic with Kyle Kuzma. Is it getting to that point where you finally turn the page and you say to yourself, okay, those expectations of getting those 2 firsts are out the window? When do you bring it down? When do you bring that asking price down is where I'm at.
I think that depending on how the way he plays at the beginning of the season, and then when they revisit that conversation come the deadline, if it's still, well, we're not going to give you 2 first round picks. unless you're throwing something on there. Because the thing that works against Kyle Kuzma is his age. He'll be 29. So he's in his prime years. He's not going to
Yep.
get so much better than what he is. Now,
Yep.
for Jordan Poole, on the other hand, I think, what is he, 25?
Yeah.
So he hasn't hit his prime yet. So if Jordan Poole plays out of his mind, yeah, you might be able to get 2 first-round picks for Jordan Poole because his age works for him
Yep.
and he has potential.
But he has to play right. Go ahead.
But
I
he
don't
got
mean
to
to cut you
play
off.
to that potential. But when you're
Exactly.
talking about a Kyle Kuzma, when you're talking about a Tyus Jones, these guys are who they are. Once you
Correct.
hit 27 or and over, if your ass hadn't done too much of anything when you were young, you are who you are at
Correct.
that point. And
Yep.
that's what we're dealing with these guys. They are who they are. There's no way we could ask for a first round pick for Rashawn Holmes. He's 30 or 31. He is who he is.
Who he is. Exactly. Yep.
And
All
that's
right.
the reason why Denny, not to cut
Mhm.
you off and I'll end it on this. That's the reason why we got the return we got for Denny, because he's 23. He hasn't reached his full potential yet. And he's on a descending contract. There's potential there that you can work with. It's not like that for Kuzma.
Absolutely not. And I'm glad you brought that point up about the age, because it's completely different than the direction that we're going in right now. And that brings me to my next point. K Jose, grade the Wizards summer league team and how you feel like they've fared thus far. They're 2-2 in the summer league, and I believe we have one more game. Is that right?
Yeah, we do tomorrow.
Okay.
I forgot who we're playing tomorrow too. I can't remember who it is. I have to look that up. I think it might be Milwaukee. I would grade them a C, as far as the summer league team. Um, and the only reason I'm
Who's
going to
been
grade
who's
them a
been
C
who's
is
been
probably
your biggest who's been your biggest surprise?
Bud Carrington. Actually, Bud
Okay.
Carrington has been my biggest surprise. I didn't expect that from him, and even though he didn't play well yesterday, and that's fine. He's due to have a bad game, but I was actually surprised by how the way he plays. For one, he's not afraid to take the last shot. Two, he has no problem going into the paint. Three, he's not a pushover. When he played yesterday, him and that guy Boogie Ellis was getting into it. They were jawing at each other. And then Bud Carrington was like, "Hey, dude, like I'm from Baltimore. I'm not one of them type of dudes you're supposed to be messing with like that." So I like his aggression. I like everything about him because I didn't know too much about him until maybe the last 2 months is when I really started hearing about him. And he's actually played way above what I was expecting. And when I see him play, he brings the ball up the court. His speed, the pace that he is, it's like John Wall. But the difference is he knows when he can slow it down. He knows when to pick it up. He is a better shooter. But what reminds me of John Wall is the demeanor, not being afraid to go to the basket, all of that. So he's my biggest surprise.
How about that pull-up jumper in transition he hit? Like he's
Oh,
going
I
full
mean,
speed and the man just pulls up. That's a very
that's what I'm
difficult
talking
shot
about.
to hit at 18.
At 18. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, again, this guy as a point guard is probably the most excited I've been of a point guard since we've had Gilbert and Wall
Mm-hmm.
and Strickland too. So that we're used to having guards like that. And that's the difference. I'm glad that Will Dawkins drafted him because I was tired of seeing the Tyus Jones, the Ish Smiths, the Monte. I was tired of seeing that. Give me a guard that's going to do exactly what he's doing. It's going to be aggressive, pull up three, all of that. Play defense and got an attitude. Give me that.
Right, man. I here's my I'm very impressed with Bub Carrington. Like very impressed, my dude. I'll be honest, man. I look at his game and I'm like, man, I mean, I just see it. I see a kid that just has he wears his heart on his sleeve. That's what reminds me of John Wall, is the fact
Mm-hmm.
that, he's gonna go out there and you probably gotta carry that kid off the court,
Yes.
before he tells you that he doesn't want to play. You got to
Right.
carry that kid off the court. He's a tough kid. He's mentally tough. You could just see it, and you can't teach that mentality. You either have it
Nope.
or you don't, you know, and
Exactly.
that's kind of the difference. When you look at Bub, it's funny because when you look at Bub and you look at Sar, you see the mental differences. You see that, you know, Sar is trying to get there. Bub already got it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Sar is more laid back. Bub seems like, man, you give me that ball and I'm pushing that rock in transition, you better get the hell out of my way. And there's been a couple of players like that in a Wizards uniform. Obviously, John Wall is one. Russell Westbrook was another. And you know that's those are all stars. You know,
Yes.
those are stars. So
Right.
you love that about Bub. But here's my surprise: Keyshawn George. The
Yeah, he's another
kid,
one too.
the kid is, to me, man, it's such a sleeper pick because I think everyone, when they look at his game, they're like, man, who do I see? He looks a little, you know, he looks a little boring. You know, he doesn't really do much, but he's so efficient. He's
Mm-hmm.
efficient. He plays great defense. You know, you can tell like he's very calm. I mean, he doesn't look like he gets rattled, right? Yeah, he takes a couple of bad shots, but he doesn't really turn the ball over a lot. You know, he plays within himself. And what I
Right.
noticed about his game too, it reminds me of Joe Johnson a little bit. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
not as shifty as Joe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the smoothness of his game, it just reminds me. If there's any way that there's a if there's any way that there's some isolation plays around Keyshawn and he works on those one-on-one moves, I think he has the ability to become that. Right now, I
Mm-hmm.
think people look at him and they see just an outside shooter. You know, they're like, oh, what's the difference between him and PBJ? Like, he'll be standing on the perimeter. Like, no, Keyshawn's actually aggressive, but he makes
Mm-hmm.
the right basketball play. You know, he can read the court. He knows what he's looking at when he's on the court. Like, he's been my surprise because I didn't expect him to be as efficient as he's been
Mm-hmm.
in the summer league. So I have to really give Will Dawkins credit for that pick. I absolutely have to, because what what he saw in him, I don't think anyone else would have saw that,
Right.
because he's not like an athletic guy, right? He's not he When you watch his game, the eye test doesn't say, you know, he stands out. He ain't the best player on the court, but he's the smartest player. His basketball IQ is there. And that's what matters. So shout out to Will Dawkins for that pick for sure.
When you mentioned about Keyshawn John, yeah, well, Keyshawn, I'm gonna call him Keyshawn John, Keyshawn George. When you mentioned about him and you said Joe Johnson, I thought about it. That's okay. That's not a bad comparison. But then when you said smoothness, the only person I can think of that was kind of smooth like that was Larry Hughes when he played for us. If you
Mm,
remember, Larry Hughes was kind of the same way. Because one thing that Keyshawn George can do, he can bring the ball up the court. There were times
mhm,
he'd bring the ball up the court and he would set the play. So when I'm looking at, and that's the thing about this draft, you got Bub Carrington, who bring the ball up the court. Keyshawn George can bring the ball up the court. Sarr even brings the ball up the court. And let me just touch on Sarr for a minute. Um, he brings the ball up the court. Sarr is 7'1", but he moves like if he's a shooting guard. And I think that's the problem that everybody has, because of the fact it's like, man, well, you need to get down in the paint. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not this guy's game. It wasn't advertised that's who he's supposed to be. Now, defensively, he's a shot blocker. His rebounding, he'll be solid. He's probably not going to be a tenacious rebounder. I think he can at least give us 10 rebounds. At the average, he may average about 8, maybe 9 rebounds. But that's why you got to put a 5 beside him, because the 5 is going to mask what he cannot do and what he's not willing to do. Because if you look at the games, Sarr really wants no part of the paint.
mhm, mhm.
Activities going down there in the paint, he's not there. Sometimes he's mistiming his jumps for the rebound. Sometimes he's not even going for the rebound. There was one play where the shot was missed. He semi-jumped for the rebound, but Keyshawn George was the one who secured the rebound and ran the break. That's what we're going to see with Sarr, and it's going to take some time to get him there. But that's why you put the players and the pieces around him to get him there. And that's the reason why I said I won't be shocked if his brother Olivier is brought over here just to kind of give him that confidence, because you're going to have to do that. Because even with Jordan Poole, we saw when he was getting, he was actually getting trolled on last season, you could tell it was messing with his confidence. So those are the concerns that I have. I just want to make sure that he has the opportunity. And if it doesn't work out, then it just doesn't work out. But with Keyshawn George, yeah, everything you said, I agree. But that smoothness, I see a little bit of Larry Hughes when it comes down to smoothness. But the Joe Johnson is a nice comparison too.
Let me real quick, and then we're going to move on to another, our last topic of the evening. One thing you said about Sarr that was concerning was, he jumped up for it. It seemed like he was about to jump up for the rebound, and Keyshawn George I remember that play because I was saying to myself, where's the boxing out? You know what I'm saying? Where are you throwing your body around, getting physical in that paint? When you watch some of these games and it's like pickup basketball, like you said, these guys in the paint are physical. Yeah. So they're all in there, they got forearms and backs, they pushing, you see the physicality in the game. And I don't want to say Sarr is running from it, but it seems like he doesn't want to get. Is he running from it? I feel like so he is running from it, in your opinion, because
he's running from it, brother. I'm sorry, he's running from it. I mean, you listen to me again. There are times when I was looking at the game, activity is going on in that paint. It's getting
and he's physical. Not in there.
He's not in there. He is not in that mosh pit, man. He's not trying.
He roams the baseline. Have you seen him do that a couple times?
He stays out there at that 3-point line, man. He is, for whatever, he stays out. He wants no part of the paint.
He really is reluctant to play the 5. That's what it is.
Oh, he wants
no parts of the 5.
That's the reason why he self-sabotaged his chances of going to Atlanta, because Atlanta was going to throw him in the paint. He did not want to play. He does not want to play the 5.
Oh man!
What did Martin say? I ain't paying 5. Sorry,
he ain't playing. He ain't playing the 5.
He ain't playing the 5.
He ain't playing the 5.
Let me say this right now. I'm gonna say this right now. I've been saying it on Twitter. I'm saying this right now on here. I would not be opposed of the Wizards drafting a center. You're gonna have to draft a 7-footer to mask what Sarr don't do. Look at Minnesota. There's a reason why they got Gobert, because it's the same thing with Cat. Cat didn't want to play the 5 either. He wanted no parts of that. He wants to roam around the perimeter and shoot the 3. So you get Rudy Gobert to mask that. We know that as Wizards fans. That's the reason why Marcin Gortat was here, to mask the things that Nene couldn't do, and Nene masked the things that Gortat couldn't do. So you're going to have to get a 5 to keep Sarr from being that. That's the reason why you say LaMarcus Aldridge. But the thing is, LaMarcus Aldridge really didn't run from the paint, but he made sure if he stayed outside the paint, he'll hit that jump shot. He'll hit that 3. So if Sarr's not going to stay in that paint, he's got to be consistent on hitting that long 2 and that 3 and that mid-range. But no, he wants no. Come on, bro. He even missed time to block on Drew Timme.
I saw that.
And Drew Timme and him are pretty much the same size. You mean to tell me that Drew Timme can push you around, bro?
Well, the reaction time is slow. And I chalk that up to him being a rookie, but we've seen this before. Like, we've had some slow-moving big men before in the Wizards organization. I don't want to bring him to that point just yet, because I want him to get a full season under his belt before I say anything further about that. But it does remind me of 2 former Wizards specifically who was very slow reactive to how they are playing on defense. And that carries on. That doesn't go away. That slow pace, that slow reaction, that has always been a thorn in the Wizards' ass. When we get a big man who just is a very slow reactive big, we have always drafted guys like that. And I just pray that Sarr is not like that, man.
Yeah, I pray he's not like that, but it's kind of one of those things that if you see it, you kind of have to accept it. The thing is with him, and this is a concern because that wasn't something that I was privy to. until I started watching these games is that he's a finesse big man too. Because there are times he's trying to lay the ball in. I'm like, come on, man, you 7'1". You need to be stuffing that. And even when he dunked it, it was just like a, and he's a Hall of Famer, multiple All-Star. But it was like a Tim Duncan type of dunk. Boom, run down the other end. I'm used to some I'm used to some type of excitement, but I don't see that with him. So Sarr is definitely going to need somebody to kick his ass every practice because right now he wants no part of the paint, bro. No part, none. I wouldn't hire him to be a painter because that fool ain't painting nothing. He wants
Man,
no part of any paint. He
man,
ain't buying no paint. He ain't painting nothing. Again, he wants to be 4 because he ain't trying to play the 5.
right, but that's the funniest thing. He ain't playing the 5. I ain't playing the increase. All right, man. Let's move on to the last topic. What are our expectations for the upcoming season? K Jose, give me what your expectations are for the upcoming season. We got about 5 or 6 minutes.
So my expectation is I just want to see development, man. I just want to see improvement from Bilal, the young guys. I like hopefully Vuk will be in the rotation. I know he's going to be probably in the G League. That's where he'll probably spend the majority of his time. But I want to see some improvement. I want to see what Bilal had worked on. I want to see what Sarr is going to be working on from when the summer league ends all the way up to the regular season. I hope he's hitting the gym because that's something he's going to have to do as well. I want to see Jordan Poole improve. So I just want to see improvement. Now, when we talk about wins, it's pretty simple: 20 to 25 wins, man. We got to get another piece. We got to get our franchise player next year. If we get the number 1 pick, that's a big old if. It's a no-brainer. You take Cooper Flagg, but you're looking at adding another young player to this core, and we're just going to continue to keep developing. So I just want to see progression. That's actually what my expectation is: progression.
I like that, man. I agree with you. I think that the key to what you said was absolutely progression. Because progress is the only thing we can look to from last season. 15 wins. I can't possibly see this front office thinking that regardless of who's in the draft, that 15 wins is acceptable from last season. I think they want to see at least 20 to 25 wins this year. And then next year, they're looking for 25 to 30 wins and so on and so forth. By the time you're in year 4 or year 5 of the rebuild, you're right at that timeline and that window of the turnaround. You want to be in contention by that time, right? So progress is a very important thing that you said there. Here's my expectations for the upcoming season. Obviously, I think that, Bilal's improvement is important this year. So I expect to see improvement from Bilal this year in his second year. I want to see that shot fall this year. I want to see him attack more. We know what he can do defensively. So I'm not really, expecting a drop off there or regression or what may have you. Jonas Valanciunas, I want to see what type of veteran leadership he actually brings for the young guys. How much playing time does Alex Sarr actually get? I think is another question. Um, do we plug in Bub? Do we plug in Keyshawn? Does these guys kind of, play very, very minimal roles, and then we don't really see majority of them until the second half of the season? Tyus is still lingering. So even though he's a free agent, he's not a Wizard at the moment. Is he going to re-sign with the Wizards? Is he going to become the backup point guard to Malcolm Brogdon? Do you package any of these guys in a potential deal that would send more vets away for young assets? Or do you trade them away for the 25 to 24-year-old who already has 5 or 6 years of experience, you know, to help them grow with the 20, the 20, the 19, the 20, the 21-year olds. You know, there's a lot of different things to look forward to this season. Also, Brian Keefe, you know, this will be his first full season at the helm. Um, you know, what does his coaching philosophy look like on a young rebuilding squad? Do we see a mass improvement? I don't want to see too much improvement, but do you see, like, for example, do you see Bilal going from 8 points per game to 18 points per game under
Right.
Brian Keefe? You
Right.
know, I know you don't really care for jersey number one, but does he 3 points per game to 13 points per game? And
Does he
even if
even
he
make the
did, huh?
Does he even make the roster? I mean, come on, man. Does
I'm
he even make the roster?
again, I'm making the point for Brian Keefe. I ain't making the point for Johnny Davis. I'm making the point for Brian Keefe. Brian
Well, I'm making a
Keefe.
point for Brian Keefe. Does he even make the roster?
Okay.
Does
I
he
feel.
even?
I mean, that's a good question. That's a good question because we both know that Johnny Davis is in the show me now state. He's in misery right now. He's in the state of misery. All right.
Right.
Missouri, misery, show me state, show me
Yeah.
state. That's where
Yeah.
he's at. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think Brian Keefe is brought here to make excuses for no young player, without a doubt.
Right.
I don't think he even gets the job if he felt like, you know, he needed to make an excuse for every young player on the roster. I think he believes that he can turn Johnny Davis. Just for example, he could turn Johnny Davis's game around. I think that's a part of his job and a part of his challenge. But I'm with you. If if they don't feel like there's any hope for him, then he's off the roster. You know, it's just that simple.
Well, I look at it
Um,
this way, not to
mhm,
cut you off. So I say that him, Amarui, and PBJ, these guys on the bubble right now. There's no guarantee that those three particular players make the roster.
right,
When you got
right.
Justin Champagnie looking like an NBA player and your
Mhm,
number 10 pick from
yeah,
2022 still struggling, that's a concern. So at that point, I'm like, does he even make the roster? Because Justin Champagnie is looking better than he
yeah. I love
is.
Champagne,
And he
man.
was undrafted.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's come a long way, and it kind of reminds me of the Jordan Goodwin,
Yeah.
right? It really makes you feel good about those players who's developed the right way, who's homegrown talent, like undrafted, you know. So he's tapped in. You only want to see what he can do at the next level. So who do you who do you get rid of to bring him onto the team? Right? That's yeah. I mean, man, I definitely don't what's the word I'm looking for? I don't wish that on nobody. I don't wish that on no player, but we are definitely in the season of prove me now. It's just that simple.
Yeah. I wish
It-
we didn't have to have this conversation, but it's reality. Um, if he doesn't make the team and he latches on to another team, I'm gonna wish him well. I have no ill will towards him. It just doesn't. It didn't work out here, and
right,
we have to understand it. Like we've had plenty of players that came through here that it just didn't work out. And
right,
I know they go somewhere else and they win a championship, and everybody get upset up and on. Well, that particular franchise was able to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses were, but we couldn't figure it out, or maybe that particular player wasn't concerned about it. So one of the things that Michael Winger did say last year is he want guys that want to be Washington Wizards. So that's what we're looking for. And I think that question was asked about Sarr. Will you see yourself in 10 years? He said, I see myself as a Washington Wizard. Hey, hey, once you're saying that, I'm all there.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
that's where we're at right now.
mm-hmm.
Does jersey number one want to be a Wizard? Does he really want to get better at his game? It's the same question that I had for guys like Sarr, Keyshawn, Bub, Bilal,
Everyone else,
anybody that comes here. Do you
absolutely.
want to get? Do you you want to perfect your game. If not, then hey, you be on your way going somewhere else.
We started the show with that point. We ended the show with that point. And that was a great way to end this segment and this show. For those people who tuned in and you guys stayed the whole 50 minutes with us, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, State of the Wizards, we are back. As you see, I'm wearing the hat, Voices of the Unheard. We really thank you guys for tuning in with us. Make sure you lock in with us on our next episode. We're not going nowhere. K Jose, did you want to end this show off with anything for the fans?
Simple. We back and we better than ever. So we got more content coming. Voices of the Unheard. We back.
Peace.